I'll see you guys in the dark.
My mother passed away a few years back, and I guess I never really recovered from it. I didn't cry when we found her, and I didn't even get a little remorse at her funeral. I started self-medicating with drugs and alcohol, which quickly turned into self-medicating with boys on Tinder. I ran up a new guy every night. Adam, Morgan, David, you name them, and I've probably brought them to bed with me once or twice. I didn't care about any of them, and none of them cared about me. They all knew why I was there, and I knew why they were there. It always went the same. We'd meet up at a bar, have a few drinks, Uber to my apartment, and we never talk again after we got our cars back in the morning. I felt gross waking up hungover every morning, but at that point in my life, I just didn't care. I woke up in the morning, and a few bucks were missing from my nightstand. If all of my alcohol was gone, whatever. It didn't matter. I was numb, and I was weirdly enjoying it. Dimitri was different than every other Kyle I met up with, though he moved to California recently, straight from Russia. He learned English and ran away as soon as he could. I knew that because he insisted that we meet at a restaurant instead of any other bar. He had a recommendation, which was odd now that I think of it. How short of a time he's been living here. I didn't really care, honestly. I made it very clear that I just wanted to hook up, and he insisted that he could change my mind. I told him over and over that I wanted one thing and one thing only, and after a while, he just wore me down. My messages had been empty that night, and I was lonely, and I was already a little drunk, so I said screw it, and went anyways. The restaurant was really nice, and I mean really nice. Way out of my pay grade. I told him that before I even arrived, and he told me he wanted to pay anyways. Insisted it's what any gentleman would do in his place. I basically told him whatever, in the nicest way possible, and met him there. He made a reservation and everything, which shocked me. I was so numb and stupid at that point that my only thought was, the alcohol here must be great. When I arrived, he was already there. A bottle of $120 wine on the table, and meals already had been ordered. I told him I didn't want anything to eat, and that I honestly wouldn't touch it, but he was so persistent that I just said okay. I drank the whole bottle on my own, and didn't take a single bite of the meal. My tolerance was pretty high at this point, and after he finished and I got my box, I told him I was going to run to a liquor store before taking him home with me. He said that wasn't necessary, and that since I had drinking, he wasn't really interested in going home with me. Honestly, it was sweet, and I appreciate it now, considering how many men took advantage of my blackout state at that point. But back then, it kind of bothered me. I wasn't even that drunk. He was sweet and took me to the liquor shop, paid for a bottle for me, and dropped me off at my place. I leaned in to kiss him and offered him one last chance to follow me inside, but he refused and just kissed my cheek and sent me off. If I'm being honest, I called up another Tinder boy and met with him less than an hour later. Dimitri messaged me first thing in the morning. I was still in the other boy's bed when I got the text. He was asking me to meet up with him again that day, early afternoon for a picnic. I said, why not, and decided to give him another chance. I decided to get less drunk this time, so maybe this polite boy would take me home, or let me take him home. Whatever the circumstance, I made it clear that I only wanted one thing, and he insisted that he would just change my mind. Whatever. I went home and got myself together, showered, shaved, the works. Dimitri was handsome, and I guess that's why I was willing to give him another shot. I showed up at the park, and he, once again, had everything set up waiting for me. I would swoon over it now. He had a plaid picnic basket, wine, sandwiches, and anything else you would want at a picnic. He even brought some board games. I'll admit, we had a nice time. I didn't drink a drop of wine he brought, and gave him all of the casual conversation he would have wanted. When all the food was gone, and the games were all played, I asked him again if he wanted to come back to my place. He leaned in and kissed me, and I thought he would just say yes. But instead, he said that we should wait a little bit longer. At this point, I was bored of him. I know, it's rude, but that's not what I needed at the time. I ghosted him and continued on with my normal Tinder life. The next time I heard from him, I'll be honest, I was 2 hours into a shroom trip with a different guy. He messaged me begging me to see him again. He told me he had real feelings for me and felt like I could make it work if I tried. He promised to be a good boyfriend and even tried telling me that my mother would have loved him. It threw me into a bad trip, and I had to leave where I was. And honestly, I went to my dad's house, and for the first time broke down crying. My dad had never seen me high before, and I basically had to explain everything about my Tinder experiences to him, as well as Dimitri, as well as the shrooms I had just done. After this whole pathetic ordeal, I blocked Dimitri on everything. Tinder, Facebook, text message, even his Instagram. I didn't want to hear from him ever again. It broke my heart thinking of my mom like that, and I couldn't bear thinking of her like that again. I didn't see another Tinder boy for a while, maybe a month. I honestly deleted my account for a while to make sure I didn't do it until I was okay to. I decided after a while that I would see another boy. I made sure he knew what I wanted, and made sure I didn't mention my mother at all. We met at the same rundown cheap bar I knew and loved. Dimitri was there, alone. I shrugged it off until I was about to leave. Dimitri came up, pushed the guy I was seeing off of me, and started a verbal fight with him. Dimitri told this poor boy that I was his girlfriend, and that I was high and sad. He grabbed me by my wrist and forced me into his car before I could even say a word. Nothing happened. He drove me home and scolded me, saying I should have asked him before going out with some new guy. I broke down crying, telling him I wasn't his property, and that he needed to forget about me entirely. He didn't. I started receiving love letters in the mail, some in Russian, some in English, some in a mix of two. The letters turned into roses and sunflowers. It scared me. Sunflowers have always been my favorite flower, and I never once mentioned it to him. He started sending over fancy bottles of wine. The sender would always be Dimitri, and the receiver would always be my love, handwritten with a heart, which made me feel like he was dropping them at my door himself. It freaked me out enough to move, but when I finally got a moving company to accept my move on such a short notice, he was one of the movers. I asked one of the other workers about it, and he told me that Dimitri had started working there 3 days ago. I had called and set up for them to come 4 days prior. I called the company and asked for a different worker, and explained my situation with Dimitri, and they said they gladly would replace him. I moved, and everything was fine, well, for a whole 2 days. Before my boxes were even partially unpacked, I received a letter from Dimitri in the mail. It was strongly worded and very crude. It told me what a wretched human being I was, and how I never deserved his love. So he was going to give me his hate from then on. I got a new job that was close to my new place, and told my manager about Dimitri on my first day. Lo and behold, my first table I had ever waited at this new place was a party of one, Dimitri. I quit right on the spot. He began getting more aggressive. His letters became more and more angry as days went on. I had to quit 3 jobs within the first week, because he kept finding out where I worked. In 3 months, I had moved 3 times, and he followed me everywhere I went. It took me way too long to get a restraining order filed. The final straw was the raw cow heart he left on my door, with a note written in what I hope was cow's blood, that simply stated, "This is my heart. Destroy it if you will." It took me 2 more months to finally get that restraining order finalized, and all throughout, he begged the judge not to do it. He told her that he loved me deeply and truly, and that he just wanted to make me happy. He apologized for his violent messages to me, and all the things he had said and done. She listened to him, but at the end of the day, thankfully, I won the case. I still bump into him sometimes. I moved 2 states away since then. When I first moved into my dorm, I wanted to do better. I wanted to take my lessons, wake up on time, and be a model student. I was hoping for an RA position later on in my junior year, and I was determined to make this happen. I skipped over dating, made a few friends, and avidly avoided parties. When I say I made some friends, I mean I made friends to study with, not friends who wanted to drink and skip classes. I made good friends who would come over, help with homework, then fall asleep at a good normal time. I still made all my classes and made a point to get straight A's and B's. I worked my ass off to not only make my parents proud, but to make myself proud as well. That was until my second semester. I minored in English studies, and I was doing well in that class. I often got teased for being the teacher's pet, and occasionally got asked if I was sleeping with him. I was constantly getting praise, and was often called out by the teacher as a perfect example of what a perfect paper would look like, so it made some sense. This was also where my trouble started. A pretty boy named Tyler was in that class with me. He didn't make great grades, and was in a well-known frat. He, however, had the prettiest smile I ever seen. He had bright green eyes that would make anyone jealous. When he laughed, everyone would hear it, and most people couldn't help but laugh along with him. He had a lot of friends, and almost all of them were women, much better looking than me, or guys from his fraternity. I didn't understand why I liked him. Maybe it was the way he snidely looked at me during classes, or the way he would grin when he caught me looking back. Let me be honest, he was far from my type. He was always working on his body and wasn't the brightest. He drank a lot, and I knew from the second I saw him that he was trouble. I broke my promise to myself and got a crush on him. I made excuses to talk to him any chance I got, sat next to him during lectures, and even went as far as to ask him for his phone number. He gave it to me, and I was shocked, honestly. We texted all the time, and it felt like sheer nirvana. He always knew what to say to make me feel good, and nothing ever felt forced. We talked about everything. We both felt like we were too old for college, both of us nearing 30, and we somehow made each other feel so much better about the whole situation. He always talked about how he loved my alternative style, commenting constantly on how he absolutely adored my tattoos and bold hair choices. He made me feel so much better than all the other guys I had dated in the past, who hated how often I dyed and cut my hair. Every time I told him I dyed my hair, he always begged for pictures of it, telling me how much he loved it, and giving me suggestions on how I should cut my hair to better suit the color. He was gorgeous, funny, kind, and literally everything I had ever wanted, even if I hadn't previously known it. For nearly 3 months, all of our communication was through text message. We didn't really talk in class, nor did any of our friends know about us. We never made anything official, but we both felt the same things. We made each other happy, and we had other things to focus on, so who really cared? Slowly but surely, the messages became less frequent. We kind of stopped talking around the 3-month point. I had to focus on my studies, and he understood for the most part. My grades had been slipping, and I couldn't let my tuition go to waste. 2 months had gone by, and the most we did with each other was smile towards one another in class, or wave passing by. It did hurt at the time, I'll be honest. I really liked him, but I set myself to do one thing, and I was going to make sure I kept it that way. He started trying to text me again, but I made myself clear that I needed to focus on what I was doing, and he understood. He was kind about the whole situation, and never gave me a problem. He'd message asking if I was free. I would apologize, and he would say no worries, and that would be the end of it. I decided to give myself a break from technology for a while at a point, and I guess he didn't take it very well. This is where everything began getting out of hand. I wasn't telling him I was busy, or replying to his messages, or even opening them. My phone was in a drawer, off somewhere, and I didn't even know it was receiving messages. He started showing up everywhere. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. I thought he had been walking to class and maybe got a new schedule, or that he just happened to want to eat at the Chinese restaurant next door too. Until he started appearing next to my dorm nightly. Until he started being outside my door when I went to class in the morning. I knew he didn't have any 8 a.m. classes. I'd hear other boys in his frat talk about parties they were having. They had them nearly weekly, and I would still see Tyler trying to look into my window the night the party was happening. I tried to shake it off. I still smiled at him around campus and sat close to him near lectures. He was a good guy when I talked to him, so why should I worry, right? I bumped into him in the halls, and at that point, I hadn't realized it wasn't by sheer chance. I guess I was young and naive or something. He begged me to come to a party off campus. He told me I deserved to have some fun during my college experience, and I guess he convinced me. He asked me to dress up a little bit, and I told him that I would. I can't remember exactly what I wore, but I remember it was red and revealing. Well, revealing for me, at least. I wore heels and did my makeup for the first time in ages. Tyler was a nice guy, and he deserved at least one good night with me before I called it quits for good, and asked him about his presence everywhere I seemed to go. I'll admit, we had fun. I drank in the first time since I was 21, and I'll admit, I was a little tipsy, so when he invited me back to his dorm, I was more than happy to say yes. It started with kissing against the door, and I vaguely remember the rest of the night. I remember feeling amazing, and begging for more and more. The room was dark all night, and I don't remember sleeping until it was mostly light out. When I woke up, he was in the restroom. My clothing were scattered about, and I had a pounding headache. I guess I started peeking around for some type of painkiller, and I opened his closet. Maybe I was still a little drunk, thinking there could be painkillers in his closet, but what I saw still haunts me even now. Pictures of me plastered around his closet, covering its wall entirely. Pictures of me walking around campus. Pictures of me eating. Even a select few pictures of me sleeping in my bed. Not only were there copious pictures of me, but there were individual drawings and pictures of every single tattoo on my body. There were notes written on them, things like, different color? Why? For Dad? And the most terrifying one that I still have so many questions about, take first. Not only were the pictures and drawings there, but there was a small table with various items on, a half-eaten apple core that had grown mold, a toothbrush I remember losing forever ago, and one of my towels that my mother had given me before I moved out. There were more things, more of my possessions, even more drawings I had thrown in the trash in my dorm. A bottle of my antidepressants that I thought I misplaced was the center of this insane shrine he had built, and at the point when I realized that, I was having a full-on panic attack. I threw on my dress and carried out everything else I had been wearing, or carrying when I left the night before, and ran out as fast as I could. The first thing I did when I got home was open up my phone and look through the messages he had texted me the previous few weeks. It was innocent, mostly until the last few. Things like, what did I do wrong? Started these messages off, but then they slowly turned into insults towards me, followed by apologies. The apologies quickly went away, and his messages started getting violent. I pulled out my old phone just for this story. Me and my friends will make it look like an accident if you disappear. I didn't fucking do anything to you, you dumb bitch. I found your fucking dorm. You smelled extra good tonight while you slept. Since I know you won't see this, I'm going to end you if you don't come to my party tonight. By the time I made it to the police, he had taken down his messed up altar of me and had deleted the text off his phone. He made me sound crazy for even thinking that he had done any of those things, and somehow managed to convince the police to Baker Act me. I guess he had a dupe phone or something for texting girls, and the number wasn't technically connected to him. It's been 5 years, and I still see him sometimes. Once he found out I was still in town, he started showing up outside of my new apartment. My fiancée had to buy a gun and multiple cameras, and we still don't feel safe, even to this day. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.